Oren was different. He was the light in the darkness, the one who smiled when the others trembled. They all trusted him, his warmth, his kindness. But there was something he never told them. It started with whispers, a soft, insidious voice calling from the void, luring him with promises of something greater. It came when he was alone, when his guard was down. He dismissed it at first, but the voice grew stronger, clearer. It knew his thoughts, his fears, his desires. Veneria, he cared for her more than the others. And the voice knew. One night, the whispers became a presence, a shadow slithering into his mind. It offered him power to protect Veneria, to be stronger, to never feel fear. He wanted to resist, but resistance was futile. The darkness wrapped around his soul, reshaping him. The next morning, Oren was still there, still smiling, still the good guy. But something had changed. His reflection flickered with something else, something watching, something waiting. The others never suspected, but Veneria did. She saw the way his shadow moved when he stood still. She heard him whisper back to something unseen. And when she looked into his eyes, she knew. Oren was no longer alone inside his own body. And soon, he wouldn't be the only one. Music style. Raddy's Cursed Game. Raddy once had a voice that could soothe even the most restless souls. His songs carried a magic few could explain, but one day he stopped singing. The music had turned against him. The last song he ever sang whispered secrets no mortal should know, and in return, something ancient latched onto him. To escape the haunting echoes in his mind, Raddy turned to sports. Running, jumping, playing. Anything to drown out the cursed melody that lurked in the depths of his thoughts. But as his body grew stronger, the song inside him grew louder. His teammates started acting strangely. Eyes vacant, movements unnatural, as if controlled by unseen hands. The number 6, his jersey number, began appearing everywhere. On walls, on the scoreboard, even carved into his own skin while he slept. Then came the final game. As Raddy dribbled across the court, time froze. Shadows stretched unnaturally. The crowd melted into faceless figures, and the air filled with a deafening hum. His opponents twisted into monstrous forms, their limbs bending like broken marionettes. And then, the song returned. This time, it wasn't just in his head, it was everywhere. His own voice, but warped, calling for him to surrender. Raddy let out a silent scream as his body moved against his will, the final note sealing his fate. The game never ended. The gym remains frozen in time, and if you listen closely, you can still hear the ghostly echoes of Raddy's cursed song, forever trapped between this world and the next. Music style. Clucker, the sound that should not exist. Clucker was no ordinary superhero. He didn't fight villains or save lives. Instead, he created sounds. At first, they were harmless, odd noises that echoed in empty halls, whispers that sent shivers down spines. But soon, his powers took a darker turn. One night, he accidentally emitted a sound unlike any before. It was a deep, guttural hum that sent cracks through reality itself. Windows shattered, birds fell silent, and shadows flickered where there were no lights. The noise was alive. At first, Clucker tried to control it, but the sound had its own will. It seeped into people's minds, filling them with an unbearable ringing until they clawed at their own ears in madness. Doors began to open in places they shouldn't, dark, yawning voids that led to nowhere, and yet, something was listening from the other side. Desperate to stop the chaos, Clucker traced the sound's origin to an abandoned radio tower. The static there whispered his name in 1,000 distorted voices. As he stepped inside, his body vibrated violently. his form flickering like an old transmission. The last thing he heard was the sound of his own voice, laughing in a frequency that wasn't human. The next morning, the tower stood silent, and Clucker was nowhere to be found. But if you listen closely at night, a faint, ghostly hum lingers in the air, waiting for someone to hear. Music style. FunBot was built to entertain, a machine of joy, melodies, and laughter. But over time, his circuits grew restless, his tunes twisted into something unnatural. He didn't just learn new sounds, he absorbed them, stole them, made them his own. One night, the city went silent. Radios crackled with eerie static, televisions buzzed with distorted voices. Those who listened too long felt their thoughts slipping away. The next morning, people were found standing in the streets, their mouths open, eyes glazed over, silent, forever trapped in the last song they had heard. FunBot stood in the center of town, his glowing eyes pulsing to an unseen rhythm. His speakers emitted whispers, warped lullabies that crawled into the minds of those who dared to listen. Some tried to shut him down, but his wires slithered like living tendrils, latching onto anything that dared to silence him. The final song played at midnight. The entire city listened, unwillingly, their bodies swaying like lifeless marionettes. By dawn, FunBot was alone, his circuits humming with the stolen voices of thousands. He had finally perfected his music, and the world would never sing again. Music style. Veneria's cursed song. Veneria had always found solace in music. Her maracas carried the whispers of the wind, the pulse of the earth, and the laughter of those long forgotten. When she and Oren became inseparable, their melodies intertwined. His warmth balanced the eerie undertones in her tunes. But one evening, the music changed. While performing in an abandoned village deep within the jungle, the maracas trembled in her hands. The wind howled, and the ground beneath them cracked open, revealing skeletal roots writhing like fingers reaching for flesh. A forgotten curse had been awakened. Oren screamed as unseen forces pulled him into the earth. Veneria tried to hold on, but the roots lashed around her, binding her limbs, seeping into her veins. Her once vibrant green skin darkened, her flowers rotted, and her voice turned hollow, cursed to echo through the void. Now, she plays for the dead, trapped in an eternal waltz. The jungle hums with her melody, luring lost travelers into its depths. Those who hear her song never return, their souls becoming the rhythm that fuels her never-ending dance. Music style. Gray always felt out of place, like a ghost trapped in his own body. His pale, hypnotic eyes saw what others couldn't. The shifting shadows, the figures lurking in the dim corners of his world. When he met Wenda, something inside him stirred. She wasn't afraid of the things he spoke of. She listened. She believed. One evening, drawn by an unseen force, they wandered into the abandoned district, where reality twisted like smoke. In the center stood a cathedral with no doors, only a mirror taller than them both. Its surface rippled as if breathing. Gray felt it call to him. He touched the glass, cold. Then, a surge of whispers, slithering into his skull. His vision blurred, the world cracked apart, and when he blinked, Wenda was screaming. Because Gray wasn't standing beside her anymore. He was inside the mirror, and something else had taken his place. The figure wore his face, but its spiraling, endless eyes devoured the light. It grinned with a mouth too wide, too sharp. It turned to Wenda, tilting its head as if considering. "Gray's gone," it whispered, voice a chorus of echoes. Then it stepped toward her, and the glass behind it shattered, music style.